Welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, there's a new documentary. It's called Amplified, The Exportation of the Culture Wars. It examines the crossover of American culture and politics to Ireland.
Before we chat with director Mike Sheridan and producer Joe Linehan, let's take a quick look.
Unfortunately, one of our most prolific exports in recent years has been vitriol and extremism and polarization.
He brought the chaos. He opened the Pandora's box.
The radical left communists hate you, and they hate our middle class.
He was priming the pump. They would believe that other people were fake news, and they could only believe Donald Trump.
The escalation into violence seems to be an almost inevitability.
The mimicking and the influence of politics from America is definitely something that has accelerated.
OK, there you have it, a new documentary that is coming out next Friday. Can you tell us a little bit? Good morning to you both.
Good morning, guys.
And congratulations, because I know this has been a passion project for the pair of you for a long time. But Joe, can you talk to us a little bit about Amplified and why you decided to make it?
This is something that, I mean, Mike really brought to my attention years ago. And Mike is so involved in American politics and culture, and he said, look, I can really see what's happening, especially with what Trump was doing and the playbook that he was using, the kind of rhetoric he was using, the mis and disinformation. We could just see that it was travelling over, and people here were starting to do the same. So that was really the basis of the idea.
Yeah, and it's like American culture is obviously hugely influential. So like I grew up in the 90s, I'm an elder millennial. So like movies like Grosse Pointe Blank, you know, Scream, Swingers. And The Insider made me actually want to become a journalist. So you have this kind of inherent obsession with American culture, stuff like movies and music. But then there was a crossover at a certain point in American culture where politics kind of became entertainment. Bill Clinton playing the saxophone on Arsenio Hall. Arnold Schwarzenegger announcing he was running for governor on Jay Leno's show, The Tonight Show. So the lines became a little bit blurred, and I found that fascinating as well. Because if that stuff can transfer across the Atlantic, then the nefarious stuff can too.
The interesting thing about it is the change. Even years ago, if you had asked someone, like if you'd asked my parents who they voted for, they'd be like, it's none of your opinion. But now people are loudly, proudly, like, who you vote for, certainly in America, says a lot about who you are and what your values are. And this exportation of the culture wars from America, like whether we talk about the trans debate, immigrant debate, all those sorts of issues, do you think people are aware that it's happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the culture war stuff, it's a tool used by people in power or people with influence to distract basically the masses. There's elements of stuff like stan culture when it comes to MAGA and when it comes to Donald Trump. And stan culture, I think, when it comes to politicians, just is not a good thing in general.
Can we just explain that? Stan culture would be like the cult of personality that we would have had, right?
The phrase comes from the Eminem video. Yeah, so it's like it's a fandom, but when there's a fandom and, like, you know, an obsessive fandom when it comes to any politician whatsoever, not just MAGA and not just Donald Trump, then it can be deeply problematic. But Trump has given multiple speeches, and he gave one a couple of years ago during the campaign trail where he leaned very heavily into the trans issue and says there's no men and women's sports, and the crowd cheered. And then Trump literally said to the crowd, God, I talk about education and, you know, economic stuff people don't care about. When I say that, they cheer. He's saying it out loud. So that culture war stuff is definitely something that those politicians lean into, not just Trump, and other politicians lean into, just to get people riled up and just to distract people.
And we're seeing this. Listen, Trump is never off the news cycle. American news is never off the news cycle at the minute. Do you worry that this is going to move across? Because we know, like, we're seeing Nigel Farage over in the UK. We're seeing a lot of EU countries with right-leaning tendencies as well. So there is definitely a shift in this.
Completely, and Paul Murphy speaks to that. He says, you know, if you take something like trans rights, like a bill went through in 2016, through that all, there was discussion, but it went through fine. He said now people are cottoning on that this is actually a hot button issue that, like Mike said, gets a lot of reaction, gets a lot of people talking, and politicians will lean into that. And really, that's what the documentary is trying to warn. Like, these things, we need to know what this is and how it's being used. We need media literacy so that people know, actually, I'm just being used in this. I need to step back and actually decide what is an issue for me.
So what's the correlation that you felt, Mike, between American politics and, because a big focus on this is the Dublin riots?
Yeah, so it was more in the aftermath of the Dublin riots. There was like a lot of very influential figures on the right. I don't like using that term monolith of left and right in America because I think they're very different depending on where you are. But you had Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson and dedicate an entire show to it. You had Donald Trump
to
Jr.
the Dublin riots.
To the Dublin riots. Spread disinformation and misinformation afterwards. So they basically said the Irish people are here and they're rising up about what happened. But we have multiple people who are on the ground at the Dublin riots speaking to us saying, that's not exactly what happened. We went through hours and hours of social media footage that we licensed around the Dublin riots. That is just not what happened. It wasn't this massive political movement. It was people catching on to something in a riot and just kind of really acting out in a horrendous way.
Do you think people in Ireland are getting fed up and that's why they're rioting?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm from Coolock. I'm from the north side of the city, and I find it really disheartening to see the protests out there. But when you come from a working class area and you feel disenfranchised, when somebody who seems smart and seems like they have your best interests at heart gives you people to blame, gives you a group of people that you can point at and say, it's because of those people, it makes it probably very tempting to go, oh, okay.
But that's not really happening in Ireland yet, in the political spheres, certainly. Well, politicians aren't, you can't say. We do. Simon Harris did make a bit of a statement quite recently as well around migration numbers. But it doesn't seem like the Irish politicians are quite leaning into this, like you would say.
I would guess that there's enough kind of people in the Dáil that would, if the opportunity arose, or they had to.
So do you think it's coming?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely coming. I think you already have some local councillors who have that kind of ideology. I don't think you have a charismatic figure here that is willing to lead. Like Steve Bannon's trying to put money into Ireland, saying he wants an Irish Donald Trump, he wants an Irish MAGA. We don't have that charismatic figure here, because whatever you think about Donald Trump has the cadence of a comedian. If you watch him speak, it's why he speaks to a huge portion of the American public. He's a master marketer. And
it's why he won the election fairly comfortably as well.
Yeah, the popular vote last time as well, which hadn't happened since 2004 for the Republicans.
So he was speaking to something, so we can't just ignore and dismiss what was happening there. But you've used the word distraction a few times. What do you think, in your point of view, we are being distracted from, Jo?
I think the really important issues, and what so many of the contributors say in the film, which is so true, like policy and governing is boring. It's really boring. It should be. Legislation takes a long time to go through. Setting up really strong, robust policy takes a long, long time. It doesn't get clicks, it doesn't get views, it doesn't get votes. What does is talking about things that really get people activated, that make people feel fearful. And that's really what the issue is. And that's what it's about. It's about really helping people to understand that, politics should be boring. If you're being riled up and you're being really activated and you're being really upset by people who are in these positions of power, you need to take a second
look. And also, I think it's not necessarily about this side or that side. I think if everybody has a fundamental, base level, rudimentary, empathy. I have a base level of empathy, then it shouldn't matter what your political ideology is.
But I can see from this, and I know you're talking about not taking sides, but it is fairly one-sided. You're taking on this.
Not by choice.
Not by choice.
But do you talk to other people with more conservative views in the documentary? We
reached out to countless members of the Republican caucus in Congress because we filmed
But even in Ireland, any kind of conservative view?
Very early on, reached out to an independent Irish outlet, and somebody in the independent Irish outlet who would be considered, I suppose, right-wing, said they'd do it, and then never came back to me. But the focus of a lot of the interviews are on the nucleus of where this comes from. That's America. So the politicians are in America, and the journalists are from legacy outlets. But you don't have
that side of it.
Everyone we mentioned, we got in touch with, we reached out, we were supposed to go to Fox News, we were supposed to go to big outlets. They always backed out.
We also spoke to GB News about going into GB News and film as well. They were kind of talking to us for a while. So we really did try.
You speak to Susan Rice, who's the former foreign, domestic and policy advisor to Biden and Obama, Beto O'Rourke, the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. You got a lot of people inside in this film. It's called Amplified, the exportation of the culture wars. You will be able to find it online as of next week, Apple, Google Play, wherever you get your films.
On February 20th.
Feb 20th, Apple, Google Play, Amazon Prime, you can buy it there.
Buy it there. Support independent film. Listen, Jo Linehan and Mike Sheridan, thank you both so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks.
Alan, what's coming up next?
Well, Tommy, we're going to meet the scientist who has tried every trick to extend his lifespan and discover the secrets to living well. You definitely don't want to miss this. We'll see you after the break.